Hey, thank you for joining me. I'm here with a very, very rare synthesizer from 1982 made by a French company. About 20 of them exist in the world, and I was very, very lucky. Someone contacted me through my page. His details are in the post below, and he owns one, and he was thinking of getting rid of it, and he decided that before he did, he'd let me come and try it. So this is the Exagone XM 64. It's a synthesizer that was made by this French company, Exagone, which actually made accordions. Accordions were obviously much more popular in the 70s and 80s. This company made a huge range of accordions, and in fact they still exist and they still make accordions. But in the early 80s, they decided to make first an accordion that had a lot of the controls we normally see on the synthesizer, envelopes, filters, dual control over the oscillators. And they made an accordion with these controls on it. They made about 80 of them. And then they made a version with a 3-octave keyboard like this. So they only made about 20 of these. One of them is possibly still owned by Depeche Mode, because you can see in some of the footage that I'll also post along with this, you can see them using one of these in their studio. The rest, who knows how many still exist, but it's a great chance for me to come and try out this very unusual, very, very rare synthesizer. So let's go through it, very top level stuff. 2-oscillator monosynth. Let's listen to the first oscillator. If we turn, this is a balance knob that will turn between oscillator 2 and 1. Oscillator 1 sounds like this. That's the sawtooth. It's also got a triangle. And then it's got a pulse width with a manually adjustable width. A pulse wave with a manually adjustable width. And then it's got two settings where it's a pulse wave which is hardwired, the width of which is hardwired to LFO1 and then LFO2, which can run at different speeds. Then down here it's got something labelled EG, which I would think is just, it's either going to bypass the envelope. Yeah, it bypasses the envelope. And then the last setting here is, it's labelled VCO2 and it's a pulse wave. I'm not sure what that is. And obviously we're going back 30 plus, 35 years. So it's very, very hard to find out information about this synth. There's almost nothing online if you look for it. There's a couple of articles in French you can find, but it's very rare, and a lot of this stuff is now it's hard to know what it was meant to do. VCO1 runs from 2 foot. Let me turn off the sub. And let's put it back on a sawtooth. All the way down to 16 foot. And over here you can actually put the scale down by another octave, or put it all the way up. It has a separate vibrato control, which is kind of interesting. Well, there you have. Is that controlled by the speed of the... Yeah, that's controlled by the speed of LFO1. And that's the depth control. So if you really crank it up, it's really going to a different pitch. Then VCO2 is a sawtooth wave. As far as I could tell, there's no way of changing it from a sawtooth wave. You can sync it to oscillator 1. Let's turn the vibrato off, and let's turn VCO2 on by itself. You can hear an LFO is going into it, so let's turn off the LFO. How are we going to do this? Turn off LFO right there. So it's got it's got four ranges like VCO1, and then it's got three which are synced. It's 16 foot, 8 foot, 4 foot, and it says S next to it. I'm going to have to ask the owner what that actually means, but we'll figure it out. Down here we've got a portamento, which I think we have to turn on over here. Yep, so that's the portamento. Then here, this is nice. So this is a balance between VCO1 and VCO2. So in the middle, it's playing both at once. You can hear that beating quite nicely. Fine-tune for VCO2 there, and then over here you've got to choose. You can choose between either noise or a sub-oscillator that runs an octave lower than VCO2. So noise and the sub, which sounds lovely. You can hear that really thickens the sound. Into the VCF, into the filter section. That's a really fat, juicy filter. With resonance, obviously. Won't self-resonate, doesn't sound like to me, not quite. And then up here, keyboard tracking, which is unusual. It's just fixed by no keyboard tracking, half an octave, 1 octave or 2. And over here, LFOs, it gets really interesting. So you've got two separate LFOs, really easy to control, run at individual rates. LFO 2 has a isolated delay, so you can just dial in if you want to delay it for 0 seconds, 1, 2, 3, and then it's got 3 other delay settings, which I don't see what they would be if they're not, why would you need 0 seconds and 0 up here? We can maybe ask Philippe, the owner, about that, or we can play around and try and find out. These LFOs can be sent to the VCF, to the filter cutoff. Either this is now at 12 o'clock, it's not sending those LFOs anywhere. But here, LFO 1 will now be sent to the filter. Sounds so good. Or LFO 2. With that just as a depth control. And these are the 2 LFOs that can be hardwired here to the width of the pulse wave. Down here you have a 4-stage envelope, just one envelope, and this will also, in the same way it's bipolar, you can send it to the filter either here with a positive filter, or here with an inverted filter. Let's hear that really quickly. Let's turn off these LFOs. And now let's hear that filter with a bit of envelope. And then you can do one other thing that's quite nice, which is there's 2 switches here that will trigger the LFO. It will use the envelope. Use the LFO to trigger the envelope. So you can hold a note and it will keep triggering the envelope at the rate of the LFO. So let's turn that on. We've got no LFOs going to the filter and no envelope going to the filter. So that's just the envelope, that's just the LFO triggering the envelope. And then obviously we could do it with LFO2 at a different rate. You can hear there's two LFOs out of sync, changing that. And here maybe we could discover, yeah, what this LFO2 delay, how it works. Okay, so that's a 1 second delay on kicking in that LFO2. 2 second delay. 3 second delay, but what do these do? Seems to do the same thing. Finally, expression mode over here. Didn't figure out what that did, unless it's to turn this on somehow. There's something different going on, but I can't quite figure out what the difference, say, between the 3 second and the 3 is here. Anyway, there it is. I'm now just going to play around with it, so we've got a lot of nice sounds to play around with. The other thing that I should have mentioned is this panel over here. So it can save presets. It comes with, I think, 64 spaces where you can save your own presets, and you do that by hitting program here and then hitting, you know, one of 8 banks and one of 8 slots for each of those banks. The only drawback with this, and that comes from it being 1982 and it being very expensive to have rewritable memory and that kind of thing, once you call up a preset, this panel is then frozen. You essentially make the preset, you store it in the memory, and that's it. That's what it's going to then play. You can't call up a preset and tweak it and change it. To do that, you have to hit manual, remake the preset as best you can, or remake the sound you want, make your tweaks, and then store it into the memory. There doesn't seem to be a way to copy things into the manual mode or anything like that. So, I mean, it's still a useful feature in a time when creating memory and presets was very expensive and difficult. And it's laudable that this synth from a very small company has 64 presets that you could store. But obviously, once you start using the presets, it just becomes a kind of preset machine that you then can't use any of the fun controls. So probably better just to use it on manual mode. There's also one final thing just to touch on, which is this really nice joystick over here. It's hardwired to the filter cutoff here. Let's turn that way down. Let's turn that way down. And it's actually got like a trim pot that you can change in order to change the gradient of the joystick. Maybe I'm doing the wrong one here. Or maybe it's just changing the starting point. Yeah, it seems to be changing the starting point of the filter. And then left and right you have a pitch. Yeah, strangely that seems to tune the oscillator rather than give you a different gradient over here, but still interesting. And then a master tune there and a master volume. In terms of connections, it's obviously pre-MIDI, so it's got no MIDI, though it does have a DIN hole in the back here for a DIN cable, which apparently, according to the manual, will work with a Roland sequencer, though whether anyone's ever tried that and whether it works, who knows. That would obviously be a very old Roland sequencer too. And then it's got CV and gate connections, and we're going to try and hook it up to CV and gate and see if we can make that work. The only other interesting button back here is this little red one, which is when you want to store presets. It's like a memory protect. You've got to hold that and press store in order to overwrite presets.